back, and it's that time of the morning where we review some books with a couple of bookworms. I'm joined now in studio by Ntokozo Khumalo, who's currently reading Soul Force by Suzanne Franco, and it takes a look at the role of women in overcoming oppression. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Sunday. So tell us about this deliciousness right here, in a nutshell.
Well, the book is not generally what I get into, but it was an easy enough read and I enjoyed it. Basically, it's about a young Indian girl who grows up in the 1900s of South Africa and grows up with a father who's trying to fight oppression and a mother who's trying to find her place as a woman of being a supporting wife, but also having her own ambitions and her own interests to fight against. So this girl grows up being a tomboy. She doesn't fit in, you know, trying to fit the sari on correctly, and it just doesn't work, and she's a tomboy and so on. But eventually then she finds her place. The one day her father takes her to a talk where Gandhi was going to be speaking, and at that time Gandhi was a young lawyer that wasn't known, but was known in the Indian community, you know, for his way of reacting to the oppression by the then government, right? So when she then goes to this talk, she discovers that actually I would like to follow in Gandhi's footsteps, and I will do anything in my power. She was the only girl in that hall of about 3,000 men. So she was like, no one is hearing my voice. I'm screaming out for Gandhi. I'm doing all these things. I'm not being heard, but I will make my voice be heard. So she ends up on this farm that Gandhi owned, where they were taught, you know, they had a lean diet, barely ate anything, taught the power of resistance. You know, they were fighting against the marriages of their parents being annulled unless it was then put in the Christian way of things and so on. So yeah, at the end of it, she did pass after a couple of years and was a renowned woman for the role that she played, ending up in jail at 15, 16 years old, and the resistance of, you know, passive and being in control of self and what that meant for the Indian community.
I mean, the time in which this is set in the 1900s, one can only not even imagine what women went through and the roles that they could and could not occupy. And for her to be such a brave young woman occupying a space where there's so many men in there, some of the challenges that she met.
I think it speaks to the times we still live in now and the challenges we still have to take on as women, because, you know, even though her father was essentially a freedom fighter, when it came back at home, he still had, you know, no, you're the wife, you stay home, take care of the children. Now, I don't know if we should see that as like direct oppression, but it's a thing of, well, if it starts at home and this woman has these aspirations to do more than she's currently doing, then what actually are we fighting for? But it shows us as well that you can actually speak up and have a voice. And even if you're not being heard, eventually what you are doing will be recognized. And I think that's what I got out of it as a woman.
Right. Some of the sticking issues for her.
Some of the sticking issues were, you're a girl, you can't wear pants, first of all. That was like a major issue, and it seems like a small thing, but she was then talking about walking or protesting across a long dirt road with her fellow comrades and being so uncomfortable in the sari that her legs were rubbing against each other, and how she wished she could wear a pair of pants. You know, now that seems like something that's ridiculous, but there's so many issues like that that seems like the struggle is, you almost have to prove yourself 10 times more than your fellow guys to be like, look, I'm worth going to this struggle. You know, and there are situations where she would say her father and his comrades would be having arguments about all these issues of oppression. And she was like, but there were some of them where I felt, why are we wasting time on this? It's pointless. But her voice was not heard. And it's that kind of thing of, do I now scream to have my voice heard? Do I become a soul ranger for a couple of years when no one understands me to have my voice heard? Or how do I find a way that my voice is heard, but I'm also not then being this intimidation of a girl who doesn't know her place?
The irony, we're fighting a struggle, but we don't recognize your struggle.
Exactly.
Your biggest takeout from this read?
For me, this read as a black woman showed the different levels of disadvantaged. it showed the different levels of fights that we have as South Africans. You know, this book was strictly on Indian community. You know, it was strictly on their fathers losing businesses in 1900. And I'm like, well, my father didn't have or my great-grandfather didn't have a business that, you know, so it shows on the different levels of how disadvantaged you know, the different levels of disadvantaged, and the conversations that we still have as South Africans. You know, and the conversations we still have to have as South African women,
right,
to also understand each other and the challenges you've gone through as a white woman or as an Indian woman, and how we can work together for the betterment of our country and for the betterment of the girls that are coming up. I think for me that was the one major thing, and well done to Suzanne for actually launching it during August month, because it makes you kind of rethink a lot of things and your role in society as a woman.
There's something that you said that resonated. So talking about the power of resistance, so there's certain things that you do. You open the conversation by saying, this is not the kind of book that I usually read, but you found some inspiration, and that's the beauty of reading, right? But when we look at small little things like that, did you perhaps walk away with a changed perspective somehow when it came to different things?
Yes, I did. The one thing with the resistance, and probably I should read more on Gandhi himself as the man, and how he managed to do that being a lawyer, because you are expected being a lawyer to be aggressive, vicious, yes, to fight to get your point across. But how beautifully that worked. It taught me that in any situation that I come across, it's up to me and how I deal with it. You don't always have to fight. It's almost a thing of picking your battles, knowing that in picking your battles, what is the outcome, and knowing what the outcome is, and knowing that even though it will be challenging, you're working on an empty stomach, you're being thrown with all these challenges, you are being given reason to voice out and be angry. That rather be, you know, strategic about how you deal with these issues. I think for me, that was personally my takeout. So, that in whatever form of resistance you may face, in whatever kind of challenge you may face, it does go somewhere. Being passive resistant, it goes somewhere to a certain degree.
Right, and I guess the title is well captured within the contents of the book, Soul Force. It's an individual journey.
It's an individual journey, and it helps to understand that we're all on an individual journey. And I think one of the greatest challenges is finding that support as women. You know, they always say we never work together. And I think one of those reasons is because we don't look inward and like, this is my journey. I'm going to respect and accept Dudu's journey. And then from there, how do we, you know, because in the books you talked about, this woman is so dramatic. In the 8 months I've known her, she's going to throw herself on the floor and throw a huge pity party. But at the end of it, she was like, you know what? I could look beyond that. That's just who she is. But when she speaks up and she speaks of us as women, I am willing to take that and run with that. So I think the challenge is also in finding that look, she's dramatic, yes, but that's not what matters. What matters is this, that will get us to this point.
Who isn't dramatic? You can't just because you're a woman, you're dramatic. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sounds like a divine read. Thank you very much for that. Ntokozo Khumalo reviewing her read, Soul Force by Suzanne Franco. We're back.